Imagine you're standing at the edge of a lake in Tanzania. The water looks strangely beautiful, almost like something from another planet. The surface glows red and orange under the African sun. There are flamingos everywhere. Everything looks peaceful. Then you notice something disturbing along the shoreline. Birds and animals appear frozen in bizarre, stone-like poses. Now, imagine taking one step forward and jumping in. What happens next? Would the water burn your skin? Would the chemicals destroy your body? And could you really end up looking like a statue? This is Lake Natron, one of the strangest and most hostile lakes on Earth. And today, we're going to find out exactly what would happen if a human being jumped into it. Welcome back to Future and Facts Hub. Today, we're heading into one of Earth's most extreme environments. Lake Natron sits in northern Tanzania, close to the border with Kenya, surrounded by an enormous volcanic landscape. From a distance, it doesn't look particularly dangerous. In fact, parts of it can look incredibly beautiful. But underneath that calm surface is a chemical environment that is completely different from an ordinary lake. Unlike most lakes, Lake Natron has no normal outlet to the ocean or a major river system. Water enters the lake, but much of it eventually leaves through evaporation. And when the water evaporates, it leaves behind minerals and salts. Over enormous periods of time, these minerals become concentrated, creating extremely alkaline conditions. The lake can reach a pH around 10 or higher in some areas and conditions. To put that into perspective, neutral water has a pH of 7. Lake Natron is on the opposite end of the scale. Its chemistry is harsh enough to irritate or damage exposed skin and eyes. And if you have an open cut, you definitely wouldn't want that water getting inside it. But the chemistry isn't the only problem. The lake is located in an intensely hot part of East Africa, and some shallow areas can become extremely warm under the right conditions. Depending on the season and location, temperatures can become dangerous. So now, imagine you jump from a rock into the water. The first thing you'd notice isn't some magical transformation into stone. It will be pain. If the water were extremely hot, your skin could suffer severe thermal burns very quickly. Your body would instinctively try to escape the water, but the shallow lake presents another problem. Lake Natron isn't exactly a smooth swimming pool. Its shoreline and mineral deposits can contain hard, rough, and sometimes sharp formations. You could easily injure yourself while trying to climb back out. And then there's the chemistry. As the alkaline water reaches your eyes, nose, mouth, or an open wound, irritation could become intense. Your eyes would be especially vulnerable. The combination of heat, concentrated salts, and extreme alkalinity would make the experience terrifying. But here's where the legend of the Medusa lake gets interesting. You've probably heard stories about animals turning to stone in Lake Natron. Photographs of preserved birds and other animals have made the lake famous around the world. Their bodies can become coated with mineral deposits and develop a hard, statue-like appearance. But this doesn't mean the lake instantly petrifies anything that touches it. The reality is much stranger. Some animals die after becoming trapped in the lake or suffering from its harsh conditions, as their bodies remain exposed to the highly mineralized environment. Decomposition can be slowed, while mineral deposits can build up on their surfaces. Eventually, the remains can look almost like sculptures. That's where the Medusa comparison comes from. Not because the lake magically turns living creatures into stone, but because the remains can look so bizarre that they seem almost impossible. Now you might be wondering something. If this lake is so hostile, why are there flamingos everywhere? And this is where nature gets incredible. Lake Natron is an important breeding environment for lesser flamingos. While the lake is dangerous for many animals, these birds have adaptations that allow them to survive in environments that would be extremely difficult for humans. Their legs are covered by tough scales, helping protect them from the harsh conditions. They can also feed on algae and microorganisms that thrive in the lake's unusual chemistry. Even more importantly, the lake can provide protection from predators. Think about that. For humans, Lake Natron looks like a nightmare. For flamingos, parts of it could be a safe place to raise their young. This is one of the strangest rules of nature. An environment that seems deadly to one species can become a sanctuary for another. But let's go back to you. You've jumped into the lake. You managed to survive the initial shock, and somehow you reach the shore. Would you actually turn into a stone statue? No, at least not while you're alive. Your body wouldn't suddenly harden like a statue the moment you touch the water. The famous preserved animals are a result of what can happen to remains over time, not an instant transformation. And that's actually more frightening, because if you were seriously injured or drowned, the lake's unusual chemistry could help slow the normal processes of decomposition and contribute to mineral buildup on your remains. So hundreds of years later, under the right conditions, someone could potentially discover remains that look remarkably preserved. Imagine explorers walking across the dried shoreline centuries from now and finding something that looks like a human statue. They wouldn't immediately know what they were looking at. A sculpture? A strange geological formation? Or the remains of someone who made one very bad decision? But there's another problem that most people forget. You don't need to die for Lake Natron to become dangerous. Even a brief exposure could cause serious problems depending on the water's temperature and chemical concentration. Your skin, eyes, and respiratory system are not designed for extreme alkaline water. And if you're already injured, the situation becomes even worse. Now, imagine trying to swim while your eyes are burning, your skin is irritated, the water is extremely hot, and the lake is filled with mineral deposits. That's not a relaxing swim. That's a survival situation. And here's something even more fascinating. Lake Natron doesn't look dangerous all the time. Sometimes its surface can appear calm and reflective, almost like a giant mirror. The surrounding landscape can make it look incredibly peaceful. That contrast is part of what makes the lake so fascinating. It doesn't need giant waves. It doesn't need sharks. It doesn't need monsters. Its danger comes from chemistry, heat, geology, and the environment itself. And that's why the Medusa nickname works so well. Medusa was a creature from Greek mythology whose gaze supposedly turned people to stone. Lake Natron doesn't have magical powers, but photographs of its preserved animal remains can certainly make you feel like you've stepped into a real-life version of that myth. Now, let's make the scenario even crazier. What if you didn't jump in during the hottest conditions? Suppose you entered when the water was cooler. You might not immediately experience severe burns, but that doesn't make the lake safe. Your eyes could still become irritated. Your skin could react badly. Any cuts or scratches could become extremely painful. And if you swallowed the water, you'd be exposing your digestive system to a chemical environment it definitely wasn't designed to handle. Then there's the biggest problem of all, getting back out. Lake Natron can be shallow in many areas, but shallow doesn't mean safe. Uneven ground, mineral formations, mud, and steep sections can make movement difficult. If you're injured or disoriented, even reaching the shoreline could become a serious challenge. And remember, you're in one of the hottest regions of Africa. You aren't just fighting the lake. You're fighting the environment around it. Heat, dehydration, sun exposure, extreme chemistry, all at the same time. So would you survive? Possibly. Lake Natron is not an instant death trap, and humans have been in the area. The real danger depends on exactly where you enter, the water temperature, how long you're exposed, your physical condition, and whether you suffer an accident. But if someone deliberately jumped into a particularly hot and highly alkaline section of the lake, they could be putting themselves in serious danger within seconds. And that's what makes Lake Natron so terrifying. It doesn't need to kill everything. It only needs to be hostile enough that the wrong creature, in the wrong place at the wrong time, can't escape. Meanwhile, thousands of flamingos can gather around the same waters and continue their lives. It's almost as if nature designed two completely different rulebooks for the same lake. For us, Lake Natron is a warning. For flamingos, it's home. And perhaps that's the biggest lesson this strange lake teaches us. Earth doesn't need alien planets to create environments that seem impossible. They're already here. A lake that looks beautiful from a distance can contain extreme chemistry. A place that seems like paradise for flamingos can be dangerous for humans. And an animal that dies there can sometimes leave behind remains that look like something from a horror movie. So if you ever find yourself standing beside Lake Natron, staring into its strange red waters, remember one thing. Don't let the beauty fool you. Because this isn't the kind of lake you jump into. It's the kind of lake you observe from a safe distance. And if the legend of Medusa ever needed a real world location, Lake Natron would be a pretty convincing candidate. If you enjoyed this journey into one of Earth's strangest environments, subscribe to Future and Facts Hub, because there are plenty more places on this planet where reality is even crazier than fiction. And the next time you see a beautiful lake, maybe think twice before jumping in.